Okay, Noel, are you ready to go for the presentation?
Sorry, sir. I got food.
Yeah.
Kelvin, you ready for the presentation?
Oh, I don't. I'm not ready for the presentation. Only
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
the presentation. Not ready.
Okay, so Noel, if you are ready, and then maybe you can continue with your presentation, but just give me around 2 minutes before you start. Okay, give me 2 minutes before you start your presentation. Hold on, huh?
Okay.
And Kelvin, for you, if you think that you are not ready by today, you can do it by tomorrow. You just let me know.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And then before we go for the presentation with Noel, okay, the presentation for you, Noel, it's up to you, the duration. Okay, I'm not putting any limitation for the duration. As long that you can finish your presentation about your assignment. Okay, if more than 30 minutes, I'm okay. If less than 30 minutes, I'm okay also. As long that you all present your assignment, that one. And then assignment for the presentation is 20%. And both of you, I need the feedback uh, regarding to our class on Friday. Okay, this Friday is public holiday, and I have been informed by Dr. Chris that we need to do the replacement. So I'm suggesting we have the replacement on Saturday. Okay, on Saturday, this Saturday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Because in the morning, let me see. Okay, because in the morning I have another session with other subject. Okay, 10 to 12. So I'm suggesting that our session is 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. this Saturday. Okay, to replace for the Friday public holiday. Okay with you, Kelvin and Noel? Okay, all right. So I will put in the Google calendar so that you just follow that one. Okay, I informed Dr. Chris. So let me go with let me sure that I have been recording for your station well. Just give me, okay, let me see if my recording is turning on. Okay, recording is on. All right, Noel, you can take over the presentation. You can start. You do your presentation.
Good morning to Mr. FND and fellow students. So today I will be presenting my HCI assignment, which is the TIUC student activity system. So the agenda for today is first is interactive prototype demo. Second is introduction. Then on next is PA analysis, usability goals, persona, task analysis, storyboard, design decision, and lastly is the Nielsen heuristic evaluation. So we go to the interactive prototype demo. So this is the interactive prototype that I developed. This is not the real system, but just a high fidelity prototype. So here, as we can see, this is the activity feed. We can scroll up and down to see all the activities that has been posted. So if we want to add activity, we press this plus icon. Oh, there's a problem. Oh, better. Sorry, so this is the prototype again. So if we want to add an activity, we press this plus icon, then it's sent to the create new activity page. So here we can see there's we can enter the activity details. So here, let's say, let's play basketball. Then we set the time and the end time. And here, the activity type, we can choose either four of these options. So let's say we press the publish button. So here we can see there's an error message showing here if we left this empty. So I must fill this in. Then if we press again, then it says your activity has been published. So we press OK. Then after a few moments, there's a notification. Then here it is a activity confirmation page. So if the user press the X button, it will remove the member. But if they accidentally remove the member, they can simply press this button to undo the action. And if everything is all right, they can press the confirm button. And it says your activity has been confirmed. And that's it. So we proceed to the next agenda, which is introduction. So TIUC student system, activity system, is a mobile application that can operate in both Android OS and Apple iOS. And the purpose is to aid the TIUC students in organizing an activity instead of using a manual method by using a online messaging platform such as WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, and so on. So we go to the pack analysis. So pack analysis means people, activities, context, and technologies. So first is the people. So this application is used by the students within the TIUC campus of all branches. And since the students is assumed to understand both Malay and English language, so the system should include both Malay and English language. And the student range of age can be estimated from 20 to 30 years old. And hence the interface should be simple and attractive enough for the users within the specific age range. And since it is 20 to 30 years old, hence students can be categorized into frequent and infrequent users. So the reason they are infrequent users is they are students who are highly committed to their studies and they would allocate just a minimal amount of time towards those activities. And students who were born around the 1990 to 2000 were considered digital natives. Thus, this system can be easily accessed and understood by most students without going through long hours of training. So we go to activities. So activities take place during the free time of the student. An example of free time is break time between classes from Monday to Friday or during weekends and during semester breaks. Therefore, there's a high likelihood that the system will operate less efficiently than normal during these times. And the free time of every student will vary depending on their timetables. And the task involved for the student is to either create or join an activity. So if they, just like before, based on the interactive demo just now, the student can create and insert the activity details. And next, the student can also join the activity. So this is the interface. And the context is for the physical environment, the system can be accessed via mobile devices. Therefore, the system can be accessed anywhere and anytime, provided that the user has access to internet and owns a mobile devices. As for social context, the user consists only for students of TAUC, and a user who is not registered as a student of TAUC will not be able to use this application. It is because it requires a valid student ID and password in order to gain access to the system. As for organizational context, mm, students not have to manually communicate with other students via online messaging platforms such as WhatsApp, Instagram to organize an activity. Other than that, this system allows students to gather students with similar interests that they have not met before into their activity. Therefore, they do not need to rely on their safe contacts in their phone, so they have more uh, freedom to invite the students into the activity. So, and lastly, for technologies, as for input, the user will use the touch screen to navigate through the system. So if the system has a text field involved, for example, if they want to rename an activity, the user must press a specific text field and a keyboard will appear. The user will use the keyboard interface to enter alphanumeric values into the text field. As for output, it will use visual output and audio output. So depending on the page they're on, the system should display a correct interface accordingly. And as for audio outputs, it will give a notification every time the activity is about to start. And as for content, so the content is the main activity feed is the main focus, as it will able to see all the activities posted by other students, and therefore they can browse various kinds of activities to choose from. Other than that, they can also filter out and activities they are not interested in. So we go next to usability goals. So the first usability goal is efficiency. So when the user is at the create new activity page, well, if they want to enter a detail of the location, they can just simply use the map tools to pinpoint the exact specific location of the activity. And depending on the location that has been pinpointed, the system will automatically fill out the remaining details based on their location. So this will save them more time without them to manually enter. And next is effectiveness. So effectiveness. So the purpose of this TIUC is to eliminate the manual method of organizing an activity. So this TIUC system should be effective enough to carry out those tasks as similar to the manual system. And as for satisfaction, mm, the system should have a simple and appealing user interface so that the user is more satisfied using the system. So the simple and appealing interface will motivate them to use and explore functionalities of the system. As for experienced users, it will encourage them to continuously use the system for a much longer time instead of causing them to feel bored. So we go to the next agenda, which is persona. So the user, as I mentioned before, the user is a TIOC student activity. The system only consists of TIOC students ranging from 20 to 30 years old. And there are two types of users, which is novice and experienced users. As for novice users, it should have an on-screen instruction that will help them to perform a certain task. The instruction should be clear and concise so that the novice user is not confused or misunderstood. Other than that, the interface language should have both Malay and English language so that the system can be easily understood by all Tier C students. And other than that, if they are stuck, they can simply go to the help page to read through all the instruction or frequently asked questions. And as for experienced users, uh, so for the favorite activity page, they can simply uh, drag the activity list on the desired order so that the most favorite activity will at the top. So whenever the experienced users organize the same activity again, they can simply go to the uh, activity history and press the organize again button so that the activity details are automatically filled in. So this is the persona. His name is Liam Hui Min. So yeah, he is a Tier C student. So we go to the task analysis. So in this task analysis, we go to the process of organizing an activity. So first is entering the activity details. So inside this entering activity details, we can enter the activity name, activity type, activity location, and oh, then next they can publish the activity. Then next, once all the members has joined the activity, the activity organizer can check the activity. So this remove member is an optional task. Then finally, they can confirm the activity. So I think I skip this one. So this is the storyboard. So first, Liang he is a start thesis student, so he just finished his morning class at 11 a.m. Then, since his next class is 3 p.m., he has 4 hours of free time. Therefore, Liang decides to organize a short basketball activity by using the TIUC student activity system that he has installed last night. So this is the interface. So here, this is the activity feed. This is the drawer navigation. This is the navigation bar. And this is the create new activity button. And the next is filter activity feed button. So here they can enter all the details such as activity name, activity description, time, number of members, and activity type. Then once everything is done, Liang can simply press the publish button and it will show this message box. Then after he publish, he can simply wait for several minutes to wait for all the members to join the activity. Then he will receive a notification and he check the details and the members. So if you want to remove a member, you can press the X button. Then once everything is done, Liang can simply press the confirm button, and finally they can proceed with their basketball activities. Then we go to the design decision. So for the overall design, this application follows the material design guidelines for simple, consistent layout to improve usability and satisfaction. So for the layout, the prototype has a top bar and a bottom navigational bar throughout all the pages to maintain consistency. So the button throughout the application will be large enough for users to tap on easily, but not too large that will occupy most of the device screen. And for time, users will have a short optional visual guide to provide an unboxing experience. And whereas for experienced users, they can simply skip the visual guide. So the primary color is chosen is magenta, which is this color code, CF3BCA. And the background is white color. It allows the clear contrast between magenta and white. Whereas whereas for white background, the text used will be in black color. So as you can see here, we can clearly see the black text and on the white background. And next is the top bar uses a consistent design but changes slightly depending on the page and function. So here in the activity page, it displays a different button, but on the create new activity page, it only displays the back button. So here in the create new activity page, it will there's several input to fill in. So for each individual input, there is a label on top of the text field. So the user can easily distinguish which uh, label is for which input field. So here, as in the activity confirmation, we can see the symbol used here is X to remove a certain member. So X also means to remove in real life. So has the same meaning in real life, which is to cancel or stop a certain activity. So as for the activity fit filter, so if a user select one of the criteria, the system should display a different color accordingly. So here you can easily understand that the grayed out color it means it's not selected, whereas the white color means it's selected. And lastly, we go to the Nielsen heuristic evaluation. And the first heuristic evaluation is visibility of system status. So the system should show a visual feedback so that the user are informed of what is going on throughout the application. So for example, after the student published the activity, the system should display this message to inform the user. And second is match between system and real world. So here we can see the, the filter button icon is used is funnel. So in real life, funnel also function the same way, which is to filter out unwanted substance. And as for plus, we use the symbol which convey the same meaning in real life, which is to add an item. Other than that, the common term is activity organizer and activity member is also used inside the system to differentiate different roles in the activity. And next is user control and freedom. So here during the activity confirmation, if the user accidentally press the X button, they can simply press the undo button on the snack bar. So this gives them more freedom and user control. And this allows reversibility of action and give the user more freedom. And fourth is consistency and standards. So throughout the application, the same color and text font is used to avoid clutter in the design. So this will ensure that the design is organized throughout the application. And fifth is error prevention. So if the user can simply pick either four of these options, so they do not have to manually enter the text into the system. So this prevents error. And six is recognition rather than recall. So if the user want to organize the same activity that they have organized previously, they can simply go to the activity history page and press the organize again button. So they do not have to memorize the activity details. And 7 is flexibility and efficiency of use. So for efficiency, so let's say the student want to create an same activity, they can simply go to the activity history page and simply press this button. So this saves them much time. And 8 is aesthetic and minimalist design. So here in the activity page, the system does not display the activity description because the activity description usually contains a long paragraph. So it is omitted from the page. If the student insists of wanting to know the activity description, they can simply press the more details button. And 9 is help user recognize, diagnose, and recover from errors. So if the user accidentally left this field empty, the system should display a correct message to inform the user that this field is required. And last is help and documentation. So the system should contain a help page to help the user to assist in resolving their problems. So they can find the self-help option or the FAQs, frequently asked questions. And yeah, that's it for my presentation.
Just stay on the screen, Noel. Can I see the reference?
Oh, I did. Reference is in the Google Docs. So should I go there?
Can?
So the reference is only for uh, history, introduction, tech analysis, and usability goals. This one.
Okay, hold on for that one. Okay, go back to your slide. First, we go for the design and prototyping.
Prototype.
You show me, you show me the preliminary design, which is the storyboard. Can I see your storyboard?
This one.
Okay, scroll down, slide by slide. Okay, can you explain this one more details?
Which one? Yeah.
Numbers. Yes, this one. This
This
slide.
one.
Hmm.
So here there's a create new activity button, which is represented with the plus icon. Whereas here, this is a filter activity feed represented by the funnel icon. So, and next is the drawer navigation. So this display additional options for the user. And here is the activity feed, which displays the uh, activity details that has been published by other students. And here is the navigation bar so that the user can navigate easily to other page with one tap. And yeah, that's it. So I go.
Okay. And then can you share with me your high fidelity prototype?
This one, right?
Okay, can you compare between your prototype and your high fidelity?
Oh, so yeah, actually this prototype has limited functionality, so it only support the create and activity functions only. So this drawer navigation, it doesn't do anything.
Mhm.
So yeah, only this plus button.
So this is your high fidelity, right?
Yes. Yeah. I use the just in my application.
Yes. Can you go back to your storyboard?
So we go to the next page.
Do you want to add anything?
Mm, no.
Okay.
So should I go next slide?
Yes. Mm.
So here is the create new activity page. So for the high fidelity, it's this one. So in the activity name, they can put in the activity name in alphanumeric values. Then in the activity description, they can explain detail of what the activity about, and the start time. So they can actually, it's not supposed to be text field. It's supposed to be what do you call it? Scroll. I don't know the name. Yeah, but it should not be text field. And number members, that it only accept integers. And as for activity type, it they can choose either one of these.
Okay. So let me see. I'm looking into the assignment rubric right now. Now, go back to your slide under the persona.
Persona. This one.
Okay, this user. Okay, how you relate with your project?
Mm, so basically, this he is a TIOC student.
Mm-hmm.
So his goals is his goals is to have a successful activity events with friends, and he also like to invite other unmet students with similar interests into the activity. Other than that, he is very active in in his health. So he likes to have a healthy lifestyle by having much physical activities as possible. And lastly, he wants to maintain his image as a reliable person. Therefore, whenever he organizes an activity, he doesn't like to disappoint his friends by canceling canceling it last minute. And as for frustration, uh, he finds it inconvenient when he is unable to find another person with similar interests to join the activity, as his contacts in his phone is only limited to the contacts list saved in his phone. So with the system, by using the system, they can find other unmet students into the activity. And other than that, he also finds it difficult to remember too many activities. Therefore, if he forget to attend an activity, he will get frustrated because he knows that he is being more unreliable for doing so and disappoint his friends. So Liang is a 22-year-old Thai student currently pursuing a degree in accounting for the second year. For him, the second year is way much more tougher than the first year, and he needs some sort of activities to release his stress. So for him, he believed that a good social life will improve his motivation in studies. Other than that, he is a outgoing person, outgo, outgoing person, and he likes to invite other students with similar interests so that he could invite them to activity. And he believed the phrase "the more the merrier." Therefore, he will feel disappointed if only a few people show up to the activity. Therefore, other than that, he likes to organize an activity with his friends whenever he has a free time to have a good social life. So, in his daily life, so on weekdays, he wake up at 8 a.m. so that he can attend class that usually starts at 9 a.m. And depending on his timetable, if his break is at least 3 hours before the next class starts, he would organize a brief activity by chatting with his friends. The example of activity are playing badminton, swimming, hitting the gym, or having a group study. Whereas on weekdays, on semester breaks, depending if he is free or not, he would chat with his friends if they are free to join an activity. He usually encourages friends to bring another friends into an activity as well to make a activity more interesting. Mm, yeah, that's it.
Okay, go to the next slide. I know the next slide is HTA, task analysis. Let me see the HTA.
So here there's a duplicate.
Okay, can you analyze the task analysis in here?
Oh,
Make it
so
simple.
so this task analysis is about organizing an activity. So the first is the user need to enter the activity details. So inside the activity details, the user need to enter the activity name, activity type, the location, and the time. Then next, the user should publish the activity. Then after several minutes, the, the user can check back the activity again and check whether everything is perfect. So if the user want to remove a member, they can simply do so, but this is optional. Then lastly, the user can confirm the activity.
Okay, that one for the HTA. Can I see the next slide?
This is a scenario almost similar to the storyboard.
Hold on for this one. Okay, can I see the relation with environment analysis?
So this system can be used in any environment as long as the user has a mobile device and an active internet connection. So it doesn't matter if the application is used indoors or outdoors, public or private, or noisy or quiet. So there are no exact environment settings where the app will be used or cannot be used. So the approximate time for users to create and publish an activity is around 15 minutes. The 15-minute starts when the user open the application and start creating the activity, and ends when the user publish the activity. Finally, no external device or products are needed. So, and the user can perform the task on the user's device alone.
Okay, between the scenario and environment analysis, can you relate these two?
Mm,
How
okay,
do you relate these two?
so Liang just finished his morning class at 11 a.m. So Liang can go anywhere like library or canteen. So he can sit there for a while using the Tayosi uh, activity system. And so from there, he can just simply create the activity and publish the activity on that same location.
Relate it with the environment analysis.
So since the
How Liang in the scenario you can relate it in the environment analysis, because your scenario you are using the persona, right?
mm,
Liang, your persona, the user is Liang, right?
Liang, yes.
Okay, so in your scenario, okay, you are using scenario for Liang, and then now in the environment analysis, how do you relate the environment analysis with the scenario?
So let's say if Liang create the activity in the canteen. So in canteen, usually it's a noisy environment, right? But yeah, it's not a obstacle. It doesn't stop the Liang to create the activity. Yeah, as long he has a mobile device and a, Wi-Fi connection in the campus.
Hmm. Okay. Hold on, I'm looking back into the rubric. Okay, can you go to the HE heuristic evaluation?
Which HE?
Yes, HE.
Is it the first one or second?
Let me see. You just scroll down your HE. Okay, number 2 HE. Okay. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. Right. So should be no problem with the HE. There is an explanation from your side relating with your apps. Okay. I think the last one I need to see your design decision.
Oh, this one, right?
Okay. Make some justification on your design decision without looking into your uh, 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 fact in here. Can you
So,
go? Can you go to your fidelity? Okay, from here, okay, can you justify your design?
so throughout the application, there's a top bar and a bottom navigational bar. So this this ensure the consistency of the app so that it does not confuse the user. And next is the primary color is magenta, and uh, for magenta background, the text used is the white color, so it contrasts well, so that this allows the user to read. Whereas for here, the white background, the text used is the black color. So yeah, it's contrasts well together, so that it's same thing to allow user to read. Oh. And finally, for um, for the activity details, it is bold, whereas the information for each label is not bold. So the user can uh, differentiate which is label and which is the uh, information. And next is the page name. So here the page name is activity feed, and it has a plus icon, final icon, and a drawer button. So if you press this plus icon, then this top bar changes, and it only in this create new activity it only contains the back button. So the plus icon and funnel icon is removed because it is not relevant for the current page. And next is so for each activity details. So in each input there is a label on top of it, together with this border around here that wraps the input. So the user can easily understand that this input field is for activity name, this input report, activity description, and so on.
Noel, go back to the
Slide.
okay under the design decision. Okay, for this one, can you refine your presentation? This one, the PowerPoint that you prepare. Okay, under the design decision, I want to know the design justification. Okay, and I know you have put it in here, your design justification, but I want it to be clear. Okay, maybe you can put numbering, or maybe you can put it as uh, you make some title in here. For example, okay, like maybe justification for the color. You said magenta right now, right? Okay, so maybe you put one here, your design justification, color. Okay, that is the example only. And then second, your design justification, maybe about the font. Okay, it's up to you because when I read and I hear your explanation, I know there is the point, but make a simple explanation, not simple actually, make it straight to the point so that I can see what is your design justification.
Oh, so I need to modify the slides.
Only under the design decision.
Okay.
Your answer into the report, no need, because I need to compile also from your presentation.
Oh,
Is already in here actually. Your answer is under the yes inside the design decision, but I want uh, it to be clear stated. Okay, your design justification.
so there must be a header, and this description should be straight to the point. Right?
Yes, it's okay. It's okay with your explanation, acceptable, no problem. But I need the header. I
Header.
need,
Okay.
yes, I need the title for your justification.
Oh,
Okay, maybe for this one, okay, you see that you follow from the material design. So you put justification one, material design. Oh, okay. So maybe that one, you can put something like that one. Mm. Then you can put material design. Okay. Mm. Okay, if you think that the justification all is under the one that you just typed right now, okay, it's up to you. You are the one who justify your design decision, not me. Okay, it's based on your presentation, your content of the presentation here. Yes, you can do the header like that one, no problem. You know, right? You need to submit to me this presentation, the file. Okay, this file, your PowerPoint. I need to compile together with your uh, uh, uh,
report.
PDF, the report. Okay, I need this presentation also. Okay, because I need to compare yeah, and I compile together for your assignment.
Okay.
So I will not make the feedback right now. Okay, I will not give the feedback right now, but all my question just now is from the rubric. Okay, it's follow from the rubric. So maybe if you think that later, not by today lah, okay, maybe by Saturday or maybe by next week, okay, I will give the feedback on your assignment plus the presentation. Presentation should be no problem. Okay, for me, the presentation should be no problem. The only thing that is the only matter is actually when I am asking because I want the clarification from you under the assignment rubric. Okay, you all know, right? The assignment rubric, you have the proposal area, you have the analysis report, you have the design and prototyping, and you also have the Nielsen heuristic evaluation. Okay, that one is from the rubric. Okay, so I think, is there anything that you want to add, Noel?
So far, no.
Okay, I think I can for sure from my side should be no big issue on your presentation and also for your topic. Okay, but let's see. Hopefully by next week I can give the feedback to you all. Okay, I can give feedback to you and not Noel, sorry. You can turn off or you can turn off the sharing. Kelvin, can you turn on your camera? Okay, Kelvin, can you give me the date or maybe the time that you can do the presentation?
Tomorrow class can ka?
Can tomorrow? Okay, no problem for me. Okay, okay.
Yeah,
So by tomorrow, huh?
yeah, but my my high fidelity prototype now not working. I think so. Can present without it. Can
Yes, can. Okay,
okay.
you need to present. You have to present also. Okay, and then all right. Thank you, Kelvin. So by tomorrow, we will go for a Kelvin presentation. The time, the duration is up to you. Like Noel, if that one take 1 hour, 2 hour, I have no problem. Okay, because it's only three of you doing the presentation. And just for your two information, actually we still have one more chapter, the last chapter, and then the last chapter is have two sub chapter. Okay, so that one maybe let me see lah. Okay, maybe by next week. Okay, I will try to finish the last two chapter. Okay, by today, because I'm actually looking for the assignment presentation, so we still have 1 hour. But don't worry, I also prepare my video actually regarding to our last chapter. Okay, before I do the lecture on that chapter, okay, I will showing you all the video, okay, regarding to our last chapter. But that one later. Okay, that one later. Another one, I want to get some confirmation from you too, both of you. Do you know the latest information regarding your final exam?
Yes.
That one will be conduct face to face, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, so you have the information, so should be good enough for you. Okay, I'm afraid that you don't have the information, so your final examination will be face to face. So that one later lah, by next week we will discuss that one. So we take around 10-minute breaks before we go for the video later. Okay, we take 10-minute breaks. All right, guys, for the remaining 40 minutes, okay, I'm not doing the going to the lecture, but I have prepared our video regarding to our last topic. Let me share with you all the last topic actually. Let me see from the system lecture. Okay, this one. Okay, so our last chapter is usability measurement. This one, usability measurement, chapter 10, and also the uh, ergonomic health and safety. So these two actually under the same chapter, chapter 10. So for the 40 minutes that we have, okay, I will share with you all the video regarding to usability measurement and also okay for the ergonomic. Okay, but maybe this round we go for usability measurement first. Okay, and then by next week or by next week lah. Okay, we will go for the lecture for this one. So please go with me with the video of the usability measurement. And Kelvin, uh, I think not by tomorrow lah. You punya presentation. Can you do your presentation, Kelvin, on Saturday?
Saturday, the 1 to 2 p.m. there, or
Yes, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Can you do that at that time?
can.
Okay, so you do your presentation on Saturday. So by tomorrow, we just go for the tutorial because I already prepare some activity under the tutorial. Okay, by tomorrow. So I will go with the video, okay, for the remaining 40 minutes, guys. Okay, regarding to our usability measurement.
So
Yes.
can link the video here.
Sorry.
Can link the video here.
Video link.
We cannot see the video you're mentioning.
Oh, I see. I see. Not yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
so
Yes.
I got the presentation slide submit in the GC.
Let me see. Let me see. Do you have my email? Let me
Yeah.
let me put in the chat box, just in case.
Oh, okay. I submit in the email, right?
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Welcome to our final section on measuring usability. In this particular section, we're going to start off by explaining what usability metrics are, and that's then going to be followed up by a bit on mathematics. Fundamentally, it ties into how, if we measure something, we want to then use mathematical tools, statistical tools, to understand the significance of what we've measured or how we can compare one measurement to another. So in this, we'll cover a number of things in terms of the types of data we'll collect, descriptive, inferential statistics, measures of central tendency, means and things like that, measures of variability, thinking about how much variance we have inside a sample. Is it all roughly around the same point, or is it all over the place? Confidence intervals, about how confident we can be about the findings that we have or what we receive. And we'll also then at how we compare one metric to another to work out if they are meaningfully different. Once we've covered that mathematical statistical background, we'll then go on to look at some types of metrics. We'll break them into two sorts. One on performance metrics, things like task success, time on task, error count, efficiency, learnability. And we'll also then have a look at self-reported metrics. And these are things that the user provides him or herself in terms of ratings and other types of feedback. And we'll have a look at how we can use different types of rating scale and how the user can provide that information. So before we get into this here, we'll start off really by defining what usability metrics are in a little bit more detail. Now, to start this off, in turn, we'll also explain what are metrics generally, of which usability metrics are one particular type. Now, metrics, they're nothing more than, it says here, an agreed, consistent, and reliable way of measuring or evaluating something. That's all a metric is. And we're very familiar with metrics. We use them every single day. Certainly if we're talking about the time or the temperature of something or the weight of something, and all domains, all fields, they define metrics that are relevant to that particular domain. Certainly if we think about computing, we may talk about memory size, the hard disk space, the processor speed in terms of megahertz, the pixel density of the screen. There are various things that we measure and various units that we measure them by. And it's no different at all for the field of user experience when we think about the user's experience of using something, how usable it is. And here the type of measurements we'll look at will be things like task success. Was the user able to accomplish what they set out to do? User satisfaction, how happy were they at the end? Error rate, for example, is another one in terms of how many errors were encountered along the particular way. One of the things that is rather fundamental to a metric then is it measures, certainly a usability metric, is that it measures something, some aspect of the relationship or the interaction between a user and the software that they are using. So that ties into then what a usability metric is all about. Now, quite often, some of the things we'll be measuring are to do with effectiveness in terms of that interaction, that the user is able to complete the task. Efficiency is also going to be another common metric that we'll have a look at, and that's going to try to capture how much effort was required to complete the task. And then finally, the third common type is going to be satisfaction. And that's going to tie into how satisfied, how happy, how content or discontent the user is whilst performing and also after having completed the task. And they're the three key bits. Can the user do it? Can it be done efficiently? And how happy was the user with that particular process? And if we're measuring these, we're capturing some of the key elements then of that user experience. Like all other metrics, usability metrics, they must be, to be a metric, they're quantifiable. They're things that we can measure. They're based on comparable and repeatable forms of measurement. So if we can do it once, we can do it another time, we can repeat it, we can collect more data, we can compare that data. Alongside that, our metrics, they're going to be derived from observation. We're going to get users to do things and we'll measure aspects of that. We'll observe it. It can maybe directly or maybe indirectly in terms of some of the things that we may infer from what they have done. Confidence is going to be important in all of this. And by confidence, what we mean is that if we say, for example, that 80% of users will be able to complete the task within 30 seconds, we will not have tested every single user of the system. We may have tested 5, 10, 20 people. How confident are we that that finding, that let's say 80% could do it within 30 seconds, it may be a measurable quantity for 10 users, but how confident are we that that's also going to be the picture for 1,000 users or for all of the users? So confidence then is a key element then. It's a statistical aspect. It lets us measure and say how confident we are in the findings that we receive. And that's really very important because our sample sizes tend not to be that large in terms of usability measurements. So in this sense, we always have to report our findings alongside with a confidence interval. So the reader and indeed ourselves, so we can understand how strongly we can make those claims or what is the probability that those claims may actually be wrong. Final slide in this section, then we're going to look at some of the advantages, the uses of having usability metrics. And there's a wide range of them. You can see a number of them listed here. So they help us answer fundamental questions about usability. So for example, is the new product more efficient to use than some other product? It may be the old one, it may be competitors. We don't have to guess. We can get users to complete tasks using both products and we can measure aspects of how they did it, and we can then ask, are the findings significant in terms of what they show? What are the most significant usability problems for the current product? So again, we can get the user to use it, we can identify, we can collect, and we can analyze then the measurements we get around the usability problems that the user encountered. So can the user use the product without making errors? Similar type of thing. Do the users enjoy using the product? Again, we can evaluate this, we can get the findings, and we can then think about that in comparison to other products. And will the users recommend this product to another? So metrics provide us a way of answering all of these, which are rather fundamental questions. They also give us a way of estimating the size of issues, and this ties into the aspect around the confidence that we have, or the ability to take a small sample size and to understand to what extent it is likely to be reflective of the complete population of users. And that's really quite important because we'll see in some of the examples that we work through that we may end up with findings where we got two averages which are different, but we don't necessarily know, are they different just due to random chance because we had a different group of users, or is it more certain that they're different in more fundamental sense? And if we're simply relying on gut feeling, that's not a good way to do it. So instead, we'll look at statistical techniques that enable us to more formally indicate our level of confidence around it. We can use usability metrics then for bringing about improvements. In a business context, quite often ROI, return on investment, is a really important aspect. That if you invest this amount of money improving the product to get something better, what's that likely to bring about then in terms of return on investment, improvement in user satisfaction, improvement in efficiency, and our metrics give us a way of actually measuring that. So there's lots of different roles that usability metrics play. They really are very important in terms of avoiding gut feeling, guesses, views from the designers where, well, we think it's like this and we think users enjoy that aspect. We should measure these things and we should analyze the data that we receive. What we're going to go on to then after this section is actually jump into our background section on data and on statistics, because this is going to give us the formal tools that we'll use when we're thinking about measuring and considering our usability metrics. Both data and statistics are important underpinning elements whenever we are thinking about usability metrics. And in this broad section, we will have a look at how we can describe the different types of data that we may wish to collect or may vary, alongside us having a look at some of the statistical techniques that we can use to understand, to talk about that data. In this broad section, we're going to explore the topics that you can see here on the screen. We'll start off describing and talking about the different types of data that we have, and we'll use nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio data. And it's much the same concept as the type of data that we would have inside any programming language in terms of ints and chars and floats and things like that. These data, they're going to have certain types of ranges, there'll be certain types of operations that can apply to the data, and it's really quite straightforward. And after that, we'll go on then to have a look at a range of different descriptive and inferential statistics. And that's going to include things like measures of central tendency, means, medians, and modes, measures of variability, like range, variance, standard deviation, confidence intervals. We've already talked about the importance to attach measures of confidence to the findings that we derive. We'll also have a look at how we can compare means using things like be it t-tests or ANOVAs, and also then going on to look at some other types of relationship between values, be it their correlation, or if we have non-parametric data, things like a chi-squared test. Now, just before going on to in this case, we're going to describe a little bit about differential and inferential statistics, or sorry, descriptive and inferential statistics. Before doing that, I just want to pause at this point because quite often statistics is something that some students like, some students don't like. It sometimes can sort of be a measure of fear of uncertainty for individuals. All of the stuff that we'll look at in this course, it is going to be straightforward statistics. We'll have a look at what it does, why is it appropriate. We'll normally sort of cover a little bit just in terms of the operations, so you get a bit of a feel as to the measurement that it's using. However, it's going to be very easy to use. We're simply going to use Excel. We can put our data into Excel. All of the functions we've described here are available through Excel. Now that said, it is important to understand about the test and how it operates. The fact we have so many of these different types of things is really quite important, and it reflects really some of the variability in the data. So depending upon the type of data that we've collected, the sample size, how we think it is sort of distributed, these are all elements then that can affect what is the appropriate statistical tool that we should use. So there are things then that we will look at in a little bit more detail, but don't worry, as individuals who've gone through and have learned how to program, all of this is going to be very straightforward. So we'll start off in this here by just describing what both descriptive and inferential statistics are. And the names kind of give it away in this case here. So descriptive statistics, they describe the data. So when we talked about measures of central tendency, we're simply saying that if you have a sample of 20 values and you wanted to pick one value that describes that, what value would you pick? So we might pick the middle or the average value or things like that as our measure of central tendency, where they tend towards. Alongside measures of variability, so these are things that tell us how spread out the data is. Are all of the values grouped together, or are they spread over a much wider range? So that's simply those types of measurements. And if we think about it, they're really important things when we are modeling feedback that we get from users. We want to understand that, well, what's the average, the typical feedback that we receive? And across our users, well, were they all roughly of a similar mind, or was there a large variation across the users in terms of what they thought? The thing about descriptive statistics, that they let us talk about the data that we have received. Sometimes, though, we'll also want to talk about not only or maybe our sample of 20 users, but all of the potential users that we have for the system. So we will want to take our small sample and reason or make inferential statements then about the wider population. And that's when you get into aspects around confidence intervals that it's really then quite important to say, well, we think that, well, we observed this for our 20 users, and we think this is going to be true for the wider population, and we can say it with 95% confidence or something like that. So inferential statistics are going to enable us to generalize, to go from our individual small sample to the whole population or bigger sample and make predictions then about that. And as I said, really is quite important then that we do always tie this into a measure of how confident we are around that prediction. So that's all we want to talk about in this section in terms of introducing the coverage that we'll have of both data and statistics. In the next video, we're going to jump into looking at the types of data that we can have or may want to collect through our usability studies. Task success is the first of our performance metrics. It's arguably probably the most easily understood. It's certainly a very commonly used metric. Basically measures, was the user able to do a particular task that was set? Yes or no. That said, one of the most important things when we're thinking about using task success as a metric is to make sure that we define tasks that have a well-defined, quantifiable, measurable, identifiable end state. We know when that task has been completed. We're able to answer that. And we should do that before we run the experiment. We should know what task success, what task completion looks like, to make sure then that that is what we are measuring our task success against. An important aspect of this is that sometimes a successful task from the user's point of view may not necessarily be successful from a different perspective. And that gets into instances where the user indicates that they have finished the task, they're happy that they've done what they were asked to do, but from the let's say from the developer's point of view or the experimenter's point of view, they haven't done it correctly, they haven't done it fully. There's some aspect here, and that actually can be quite interesting, because there we have a situation where the user thinks one thing and the experimenter thinks a different thing. It may be an indication of where the test hasn't been particularly clearly defined, so the user got confused. It may also expose a perfectly legitimate usability problem in terms of the underpinning application or its interface, where the user has misunderstood some aspect, and that can then be improved to improve the usability of the system. Commonly, when we think about task success, we can view it as a binary measurement. It is either successful or not. Either you pass the test or you don't. There's no sort of intermediate stage in it. If that's the case, we can measure it sort of as nominal data. It's pass or fail, simple as that, and measure these different types of activities. If we classify them as a 1 and a 0, it gives us ways then of using some of our statistical approaches to analyze the task data that we receive. That said, there are different reasons why a task may fail, and quite often it is useful to, alongside thinking about task success and measuring that, to also record the reasons why a task failed, because generally task failing is not something that you want to do. You want to understand the reasons why and then go about improving those aspects to increase the percentage of tests that do pass. So we have some of the reasons here why a test may fail. It's not an exhaustive list, but it lists some common ones. So the first one may be that the user gives up, that the user indicates that, if they were doing the task on their own, they would have stopped at this point. They don't want to carry on, don't know what to do, they've just given up. Alternatively, the moderator may also stop the task, that the user may be getting confused, has not been able to find things, and the moderator just goes, look, let's stop at this point, there's no point carrying on. Alternatively, you may define that there are certain criteria, like a maximum duration, and if you go beyond that maximum duration, it's the same as a task failure, effectively. And the bottom one is what we've talked about, is that the participant has incorrectly indicated they complete the task. They, from their point of view, they've done what they were asked, but from the experimenter's point of view, it hasn't been what they were asked, or what they've done has not been correct in some sense. And they're interesting ones, because you then get into questions around, is it simply an experimental design? Is there some confusing element? Are there fundamental differences between the mental model and the conceptual model, between user and the software that they're using? So in practice, it is, where possible, a good idea then to record the reasons for task failure, because that can help with subsequent analysis. Important as well, because here we are dealing with binary data. If we're thinking about either it being passed or failed, it's nominal data, it's ordinal data, depends if you want to order the thing. It's certainly not interval data or ratio data. So it means then that whenever we're thinking about this statistically, and also combined with the fact that our sample sizes will probably not be that large, we can end up with a situation where our confidence intervals are going to be actually quite large. There's just a lot of uncertainty around it. Now, there has been a number of statistical techniques that people have looked at where you have this type of sort of binary, reasonably small sample size, and what gives you, if you like, a best outcome, not in terms of favorable results, but best in terms of most accurate model. And there's one known as the adjusted wall that is particularly suitable where we have binary, reasonably sort of low sample sizes. And if you're collecting that type of data, you can see the link on the screen here. Do have a look at the confidence interval calculator in that particular one, or just Google for adjusted walled calculator. You'll find a number of them online. Use that for analyzing your data. Time on task then is the next one, and it's related to task success because it is simply measuring the length of time that the user took on that task. Can also be known as completion time or task time. And again, it's a useful additional insight, not only was the user able to do it, but how long did it take? And whenever we go on to think about efficiency, and particularly how do we show improvements in efficiency, then time on task is an important element, because in that sense then we are able, it is interval data, we are able to compare it against one another in terms of the differences between different measurements. So it's really important for any product where the user may perform a certain task repeatedly. If that's the case, we want to make sure that that particular task can be completed in the minimum amount of time safely, in all of those types of aspects as well. So where we have frequently performed tasks, that's a good indication of ones where we should be looking at the time on task measurement of it. Thankfully, it's reasonably straightforward to measure. Most cases, you have a start time when you begin it, and then you have a defined end point or conditions under which you would end the particular test. If you're calculating this metric, you'll also find that it can be linked into return on investment. So if you have two different approaches and you're testing a new approach and it saves, it can be done 20% quicker than the old approach, you actually then can use that saving in time to work out what that means for potentially a return on investment. If you were to spend this amount of money developing that feature and it saved the users this amount of money overall, what does that equate to then in terms of an overall net investment and return on that? Collecting, analyzing time and task data, it's quite straightforward. It's just simply the gap between the start and the end of the task. We can look at average user completion for each of them. It is important to look at the distribution across this here just to see, is it a normal distribution where most users take the same with a bit of variation around it, or is it some other type of distribution? Particularly important as well to think about potentially for outliers, where most people maybe did it in 10 seconds, but you could have one user that spent 25 minutes on it. Maybe legitimately, not legitimately, but that item of data you may want to excise from the test set because it will limit your ability to meaningfully calculate statistics on the rest of the data where we have outliers. So that's all we want to look at inside this section. Both task success and time on task, they're easily calculated, easily understood, but yet really very useful performance metrics, and they sort of form the bread and butter of the type of metric that we can certainly monitor when we're thinking about users' abilities to do defined tasks. Errors. Unfortunately, we all make them. It's just an element of life. And as designers, they're important characteristics for us to think about when we are designing our applications. And that also extends to when we are measuring usability. So why might we have a look at the errors that the user makes, both in terms of classifying them and counting them? There's a range of different reasons why we could do that. One of the reasons is that the actual errors that the user make, they tend to be the most significant elements that result in task failure. And we always want our tasks to succeed. So working out why they don't succeed, that gives us an indication of what we may need to change. They can also help us identify where there may be underlying usability issues, depending on the type of error that has occurred, or indeed where there's a mismatch between the conceptual model and the user's mental model. So they provide useful insight then into issues that arise. We can also complement it with other types of metric in terms of time on task and task success to get a richer indication then of how users are performing. Generally, there's a couple of key conditions under which we do normally want to identify and to look for and to measure and to classify errors. And they are where an error is going to result in a significant reduction in efficiency. Some errors are quite minor and we may want to get them sort of refined out of the system. Other errors can be quite significant and really trip up the user. And if something is likely then to force the user to redo a whole series of steps, that's quite a significant impact. Those types of errors we should look for. And also errors that result in task failure or have significant negative consequences. So if that results in the task not happening, or if it results in some outcome that the user may not at all desire, then again, there are significant errors that we should specifically identify and then try to address. In terms of what makes an error then, and this is really a very, very open question, but that there are lots of different reasons why errors may arise. And you see some of the common ways that may happen on the screen. So for example, the user might enter incorrect data into a field. They may make the wrong choice from a menu or a dialogue. And again, that assumes then that we, in these both cases, we know what the notional correct is depending on the task that the user is doing. They may also follow an incorrect sequence of actions in terms of things in the wrong order or out of sequence or missing some elements. Or they may, again, related to that, fail to make a particular action. So they omit something along the way. So they're all things in terms of admissions, additions, incorrect selections, incorrect input that can result in erroneous outcome. Now, bit at the bottom, obviously, which actions are erroneous depends upon the task. And that's a key element then, that when we're measuring errors, we are measuring errors that occur whilst the user is performing a particular defined action. And that's really quite important. In terms of collecting and measuring errors, this in some cases can be straightforward. In some cases it can be a lot more difficult, because we have to then be able to classify and measure and identify the actions that the user are taking for us to be able then to label some as wrong or inappropriate or omitted and so on. And for some tasks, we may have a very, very large number of potential errors that the user could introduce. If you have a form, there may be, again, a number of key fields that have to be filled in. There may be various types of data validation that apply to those individual forms. Taken together, you may have a very large number of potential errors that could be introduced. However, this then ties into our previous slide that we really want to initially focus on the errors that we consider to be of significance in terms of impacting on efficiency, or in terms of resulting in task failure, or having unattended and unwelcome consequences. We can, and typically do, measure the number of errors by task. So we may say to the user, okay, for this particular task, here's, off you go and do that. We may identify a number of steps the user has to go through, and we could then count errors relative to those particular steps. User may go through performing 0 errors, all worked fine, up until some defined maximum that we've identified. When we're analysing and presenting errors, again, we have a couple of options here as to how we do that. They're not mutually exclusive. You can combine various ones here, and they all provide us with different ways of getting a bit of insight into the data we collect and understanding its significance. So there's 3 shown here. The first one is average errors per task, where if we have our users performing several different tasks, we then present those tasks with the number of errors that occur per task. Because the number of errors can vary between tasks, we may have one task where there may be only 3 or 4 errors. We could have another task where there's 10 potential errors. Sometimes we may just want to present it in absolute numbers. Sometimes maybe we may want to present it as a percentage of the number that could have occurred. It's just a judgment call depending on what looks to be most useful. It's also, and can be very useful, to think about the average number of errors per user in terms of then reporting for this particular user as he or she goes through their tasks. Well, how many errors did they make on average per task? And again, that helps us understand and identify the variability that we have across our populations of users. We may find, sometimes you do, that there are a small group of users that result in a significant number of errors then being introduced. And they're quite important because it is useful then to look at those users in terms of trying to identify, are there any issues potentially around accessibility? Are there any issues potentially around a mismatch between the user's mental model and the conceptual model that we have assumed for people doing that particular task? And the final one then is to not only to count the number of errors, but to include metrics then that weigh them based upon their severity. So we might say that there was, an average of 8 errors for this particular task. 1 of them was severe, 2 of them, moderate, 4 of them with a minor, and so on. So again, that also gives us a way of further segmenting the data, potentially then identifying the elements that we focus on first of all. So that's all we want to cover at in terms of this initial foray into having a look at errors. They are useful elements then to measure, particularly as they give us good insight into where we have issues or mismatches with our design, and they give us quite often good insights then into what we need to do to improve matters. We're going to go on this to the next section. We're going to have a look at efficiency. So fundamentally, errors tie into efficiency. We want our users to be able to complete tasks in as efficient manner as they possibly can. In this section, we're going to have a look at a couple of different rating scales that are commonly used, and we'll then go on to have a look at how we can integrate questions using those rating scales into our user tests. So the two rating scales we'll explore are both the Likert and the semantic differential scales. Both commonly used, both really quite straightforward, and also both capable in terms of what we can use them to gather or to glean insight into. For Likert scales then, first of all, they provide a statement to which we ask the user to provide their level of agreement with that statement. Now, the statements, we could word them positively or we could word them negatively. We could ask the user if they found the system easy to use or if they thought the system was not easy to use. In all cases, we give the user a scale across which they can indicate their level of agreement. And there's a couple of options. You can see them here. A 5-point scale is very commonly used, where you would have options from strongly disagree all the way across to strongly agree, with sort of a neutral point in the middle. You can also see it expressed as a 7-point scale, where again we have our anchor point, strongly disagree, strongly agree, and the user indicates where their value fits across that scale. For Likert scales, they typically, not always, but typically they use an odd number of responses. That means there is a middle point that's there, and that middle point represents neither a disagree or neither agree response. It's a neutral response. Whenever we're setting questions, and this applies to both Likert as it does to the semantic differential, we should avoid the use of strong adverbs in the questions or the statements that we're putting forward. So we should not ask the user if they felt the system was very easy to use, because the very again shifts the scale in ways that it makes it hard to compare or to understand the data we get back. We should just simply ask them, was the system easy to use, and look at their agreement with that statement. For semantic differential scales then, quite similar. Is in this case here we're providing 2 anchor points, and there's going to be a bipolar set of words. So we'll use a word and its opposite, and we'll present those word pairings on either side of the scale, and we'll ask the user to rank whereabouts they fit across that scale. Maybe a 5-point, could be a 7-point scale. They would be commonly used. So you can see an example here. We might show the user an interface and ask them, well, do they think, how would they assess that interface? And on one end, we're defining it to be, well, it's an ugly interface. And the other end, we're defining it to be a beautiful interface. And we're asking them to indicate where they fall across that scale. If we're doing this and using this approach, it's quite important we use word pairings that are opposites. And that needs to be clearly perceived by all of the people that we're asking the question to. If they're not truly opposites, we will confuse the users, and they're going to be uncertain about how one thing morphs into another thing if they don't view them as bipolar inside their own, how they conceptualize them. Thankfully, there's lots of good published word pairing lists that we can use. So if we're using this type of question, we should refer to published lists in terms of making sure we're selecting then word pairings that are opposites and will be safely interpreted as opposites. And you can see some examples here that we may have sort of meaningless or meaningful, time-saving, time-consuming, comfortable, uncomfortable. So they're all clearly the opposite of one another. In terms of general guidelines then for rating scales, there's 3 points here. They apply to both Likert and semantic differential. They're all quite good ones. So the first one is that if we're crafting questions alongside them providing an appropriate rating scale for it, it's not an easy thing to do. It can be quite a difficult and challenging thing to do. Thankfully, there's lots of existing question banks that are available out there that have been carefully crafted and well tested. So unless you have a need for something very, very specific, it's good to check what question banks are available and to leverage them if they're fit for purpose in terms of what you want to test. Triangulation is really useful. So in this sense, if we wanted to test if the users found our system frustrating, we might ask a number of different questions that approach that from slightly different ways, using slightly different terms or slightly different questions. Some of them we may word positively, some of them we may word negatively. And when we get our data back, we can look across that set of questions to see if the trends are the same across those questions. And if they are, then that gives us a good, solid evidence base that that is something that the users have broadly expressed. So for important topics, make sure we include several different questions that approach it from different angles so we can triangulate our results. And the final point then is it's a good one. Quite often, in fact probably in most cases, a neutral response to a statement is entirely satisfactory. It makes good sense. The user may not agree or disagree, they may just actually be in the middle and not have any strong views with regard to something. That's fine. We need to, however, also be aware of what's known as a social desirability bias. Whereas if we're asking the user directly, then the user is likely to feel that they will want to provide answers that they think we will want to hear, or that they will perceive as being more sort of socially desirable or socially correct. So that means that even though the user may not like something, they may be less inclined actually to express that directly to us and end up using sort of a neutral on the fence response. So sometimes if we take away that neutral response and provide a slightly positive and slightly negative response, and it's a choice between the two, we can get better insights then into some of the aspects that the users don't like, but don't particularly want to highlight to our face. So that covers then a number of different rating scales and how we can use them. Next couple of slides, we're going to look at then how do we use questions, be it the Likert or semantic differential, how do we integrate them into the types of user testing that we will do. So when to collect self-reported data, and in fact the next two talks after this are going to look at that in more detail. We have a couple of options. We could get the user to do a particular task. Now we may be measuring error rates and task completion times, that's fine, but get the user to do something and we could ask them some questions immediately after they've done it. So that's post-task ratings. So do something, immediately ask something. We could also get the user to do several different things, and then at the end of the session, we could say, ask them some questions, give them the questionnaire at that point to try to gather their overall experiences across that session. They both have their strengths and advantages, and you may want to use both of these metrics and mechanisms. If we're asking the user to answer the questions immediately after having done the task, that's good to capture those things that are related to that. If the user found anything confusing or uncertain, that type of information is unlikely to be retained in terms of their memory, so get them to do it, and then let's check to see if that's, well, it's still fresh in their mind. Whereas for questions at the end of the section, there the users had a greater opportunity to establish those sort of overarching views in terms of their reflections around how the system has worked, what it doesn't work, what they like, what they don't like, what they feel overall. So they're good things then to measure and to ask about at the end of the session. It is important to be aware of biases in this. And we talked about this on the last slide then, that if we're asking somebody directly, either face-to-face, over the phone, anything like that, they're talking to us. Social desirability bias will kick in, and that's something we should be mindful of. If it's entirely anonymous, we're much more likely then to get honest user feedback. So as a takeaway from this here, because we don't want to bias our data in any way, when we're collecting our data, we should go out of our way to make sure then that we do it in a way that is anonymous. And if we can't do that, we should make sure that we don't have any experimenters looking at the users. They can do it in a way where they're unobserved. They can do it in a way where they think then that it's not personally identifiable in terms of the feedback that they are providing. Analysing ratings then, so this is actually normally quite straightforward, but there's a few important elements in it. If we take our strongly disagree to strongly agree, let's say it's a 5-point scale, we can numerically map that from a 0 to a 4 or from 1 to 5. Quite often it's good to include a 0 in this here. And that then gives us a way of looking at some of our statistical techniques for analysing the data that we have received. Strictly speaking, in terms of this here, it's not interval data, but it's you know, if it's a 5 or a 7-point scale, it's maybe sufficiently similar to interval type data if we've carefully constructed the questions that we can treat it as such. But that's a modelling assumption. There is some important elements we need to be careful of in this here. We should always look at the frequency distribution when we're collecting our feedback from the users. In a lot of cases, for example, let's say task completion time and things like this, we quite often make an implicit assumption that it's going to be normally distributed. There'll be an average task completion time. Most users will be around it with some small number of outliers. For user evaluations and user ratings, that may not be the case. We may find that we have bimodal distributions, that some users love it, some users hate it, and there's not really too many in that sort of neutral or middle ground. So always look at the distribution and be careful then about using any of our parametric measurements because a lot of those do assume we have normally distributed data. So we need to be careful then of the information we collect through this here that we don't use an inappropriate statistical technique to infer some information about it. Now that's all we want to cover in this particular section. In the next one, we're going to go on to have a look at post-task ratings. So these are ones that we get to do a task, then we're going to ask the user to evaluate something immediately after that task.
The new me is beauty. Yeah, you know, people used to say, no, Norman's okay, but if you followed what he said, everything would be usable, but it would be ugly. Well, I didn't have that in mind, so this is neat. Thank you for setting up my display. I mean, it's just wonderful. And I haven't the slightest idea what it does, or what it's good for, but I want it. And that's my new life.